God didn't sculpt you with a chisel. He breathed you into being with love.
Some things are crafted. Others are born of fire, metal, or motion, but not you. You were not the result of a mechanical act or an accidental alignment of time and matter. You were formed with breath. That holy breath carried intention, intimacy, and identity. And that means your existence is not just valid, it is sacred. The world around you tries to market identities like fast fashion. It offers roles to audition for, masks to wear, labels to chase. But before any of that noise ever reached your ears, God had already spoken over you, mine. What He designs, He does not mass produce. What He forms, He does not abandon. And what He claims, He does not forget. Let's step into this truth, not to escape the noise, but to remember what it cannot erase. You were never made to be a copy. You are a masterpiece. He knows the blueprint, so trust the hands that formed you. Not every beginning looks like progress. Sometimes it just looks like stillness or confusion or a strange, quiet space where you feel more uncertain than inspired. But even in that quiet, something is happening. Because you don't begin with your own idea of yourself, you begin with God's idea of you. And that idea was never average, accidental, or vague. It was exact, intentional, loving. In Psalm 139, we read, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." This isn't just poetic imagery. It's a holy reminder that your soul, your personality, your wiring, your heart, it was all hand-woven. Not compiled in a factory, not copied from a template, knit, line by line, thread by thread, which means that even the parts of you that feel fragile were made on purpose. And even the threads you try to hide are part of the pattern God calls beautiful. The reason this matters so deeply is because life will try to convince you that your value is negotiable, that your worth must be earned, that your purpose depends on your performance. But that's not how God writes identity. He didn't consult a checklist before He created you. He didn't wait to see how you would turn out before calling you His. That truth should silence every whisper of insecurity you've ever believed. Mark Batterson once wrote, "God's work is always purposeful, even when it feels invisible." That means you're not just being shaped in the obvious seasons when things are flourishing, or goals are being hit, or dreams are falling into place. You're also being shaped in the quiet, in the not yet, in the days you feel lost or uncertain. In fact, those are the places where God's design often takes its deepest root. Because transformation doesn't start with action. It starts with trust. Trust in the one who began the work long before you could see it. And sometimes the hardest person to trust in God's plan is yourself. Not because you don't believe in Him, but because you feel inadequate, behind, or somehow not enough. But Christine Kane reminds us, you are not a random accident. You are a divine intention. That means even the doubts you feel were factored into His design. Even the wounds you've carried have not disqualified you from the story He's still telling through your life. You were not built for speed, you were built for substance. Your journey isn't about how fast you arrive at your goals. It's about learning to walk daily with the one who already knows what's ahead. It's about believing that the blueprint for your life hasn't changed just because your circumstances did. Because God's designs are not subject to opinion polls or shifting seasons. He finishes what He starts. And what He started with you is a life that carries weight, not because it looks impressive, but because it was imagined in love and formed by eternity. There are parts of you that you still don't understand. traits you haven't fully grown into, and callings that feel bigger than your capacity. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means the blueprint is still unfolding, slowly, precisely, faithfully. When you look in the mirror, what do you see first? The flaw, the wrinkle, the thing you wish you could change? Or do you see what God sees? A soul He shaped with purpose, a heart worth redeeming, a design worth celebrating. It's hard. Culture teaches us to scrutinize every detail, compare every part, and chase something shinier. But God never called you to be shiny. He called you to be whole. So when you're tempted to shrink into someone else's shape just to be accepted, remember this. He didn't ask you to audition. He already appointed you. And when you feel like you're not enough, remind your soul who crafted you. Not trends, not timelines, not other people's standards, but the very same God who spoke galaxies into being and yet still chose to write your name on His palm. You see, when God knits, He doesn't make mistakes. When God builds, He doesn't need backup plans. And when God chooses someone to carry His light into the world, He doesn't do so lightly. You were chosen not because you had all the answers, but because you were willing to be formed. And that willingness is where miracles begin. You don't need to feel ready to be ready. You don't need to be fearless to move forward. You don't need to know the outcome to take the next step. You just need to know who made you and trust that He still holds the pattern. Let this truth become a habit in your morning. Before you reach for your phone, before you read a single word from the world, speak this to your own soul. I was designed with purpose. I am part of a holy blueprint. God's hands formed me, and His hands still hold me. If that becomes your starting point each day, the noise of this world will shrink, the comparison will fade, and you'll start to recognize the quiet, steady confidence that comes from being loved long before you were seen. There's a reason why you are here, right now, in this exact moment. You didn't miss your moment. You didn't fall behind. You didn't somehow mess up the master plan, because in the heart of God, timing is never late and worth is never lost. You are not just another name in a sea of people. You are not just a face in the crowd. You are a blueprint that bears His fingerprints, a living story still being written, a design formed with divine love that cannot be duplicated, no matter how hard the world tries to standardize your soul. So if the world makes you feel like you have to change to be chosen, remember you already are. You're chosen, you're called, and you're created. Not just for survival, but for significance. And not just any kind of significance, but the kind that only comes when you trust the one who wrote your name in the sky of His story and still whispers it with every breath. Hold that truth tightly. Let it walk with you. Let it speak louder than your doubts. Because when you remember who formed you, you begin to live not for approval, but from it. Not as a product of pressure, but as a promise unfolding. And no matter what you face, confusion, failure, uncertainty, rejection, nothing can erase the truth of how you were formed. Knit, with care, with clarity, with holy intention, you are the handiwork of heaven, the detail that delighted God, the proof that love doesn't make copies, it creates miracles. So the next time you question your worth, trace it back to the hands that formed you, because that's where your story began, and it's where your strength still lives. The world sells copies, but heaven still celebrates originals. It starts small, this pressure to become like someone else. Sometimes it's a look, a subtle tone and a voice, a post you scroll past that quietly suggests you're not quite enough as you are. Other times, it's more direct, an expectation from family, a comparison with a friend, a voice that's been playing in the back of your mind since you were young, repeating one persistent lie. You're only as valuable as how well you fit in. That pressure over time becomes weight. It shapes the way we talk, the goals we set, the version of ourselves we allow to be seen. And without even realizing it, we trade in our authenticity for acceptance. But here's the sacred truth the world won't tell you. God never asked you to fit in. He asked you to shine. In Romans 12:2, Paul writes with piercing clarity, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This is not a suggestion, it's a lifeline. Because conformity might win you the applause of the world, but it will cost you the voice of your soul. And your soul was meant for more than performance. It was meant for communion with God, with purpose, with truth. And yet, the culture we live in thrives on sameness. Trends come like waves, pulling people into identical rhythms, how to look, what to say, who to become. But God's creativity has never worked in templates. Just look at the sky. No two clouds have ever danced the same way across it, and not one snowflake has been duplicated. Why would you be the exception? Theodore Roosevelt once said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." That's not just a clever phrase. It's a devastating reality. Because every time you compare your unique design to someone else's highlight reel, you begin to shrink the glory of what God intended for you. You start measuring your story by someone else's chapter. You begin to despise what makes you different, not realizing that what sets you apart is what heaven celebrates most. And yes, comparison is sneaky. It dresses itself in self-improvement. It whispers under the guise of motivation. But at its core, it teaches you to look outward for value rather than inward for purpose. That's why it drains your joy. Because you can't be fully alive while secretly wishing you were someone else. God doesn't anoint replicas. He anoints originals. John Mason once wrote, "You were born an original, don't die a copy." And those words carry the kind of conviction that shakes you awake. Because the more you hide your uniqueness, the more the world misses the part of God's beauty that only you carry. Your voice, your humor, your way of seeing people, your burdens and blessings. They form a fingerprint on the world that no one else can leave. It's not your job to be what others expect. It's your calling to be what God created. That means living honestly, courageously, not perfectly polished, but deeply present. And yes, that will come with moments of insecurity. You will question whether being yourself is enough. You will face people who want to mold you into something they can understand or use or control. But remember this, Jesus was rejected not because he blended in, but because he dared to be different, to speak truth, to walk in holiness, to love radically. So when you feel that tension between who you are and who the world wants you to become, stand still. Breathe. Return to the words God has already spoken over you. Words like beloved, chosen, set apart. These are not just poetic labels. They're divine realities, and they don't change just because culture moves on to the next thing. It's tempting to chase validation, to shapeshift until you get the nod of approval. But validation that costs you your authenticity is not validation. It's a trap. Because if you have to become someone else to be loved, then the love you're receiving isn't really yours. It belongs to the version you've created, not to the soul God designed. Living as your true self is not about stubbornness or pride. It's about stewardship. It's about recognizing that the identity God gave you is not yours to erase. You are a vessel, a bearer of his image, and every time you honor who he made you to be, you're worshiping him in a way that no song or sermon ever could. And the truth is, you'll never outrun the world's opinions, but you don't have to live by them, because opinions change, trends fade, but the identity rooted in God is eternal. So instead of editing yourself to match what's trending, anchor yourself in what's true. That you were created in the image of a wildly creative God who makes no mistakes. That your quirks, your voice, your wounds and wisdom, they're all ingredients in a masterpiece still unfolding. Transformation doesn't require imitation. It requires surrender. And that kind of surrender, the kind where you lay down your masks, your people-pleasing, your pretending, is where real growth begins. That's where your life stops being a performance and starts being a prayer. When the world demands you become less so others feel like more, you're not being selfish by protecting your soul. You're being faithful. You're saying, I won't trade the sacred for the shallow. I won't exchange my God-given identity for a temporary image. And that takes courage. In fact, it might be one of the most courageous things you ever do. Not climbing a mountain or achieving a title, but staying rooted in a world that rewards artificiality. Choosing real over impressive. Integrity over imitation. Purpose over popularity. So how do you live that out? This call to be original in a world of copies. Not by becoming loud, not by forcing difference, but by staying in daily communion with the one who made you, by letting his word shape your heart more than the world shapes your habits. By looking in the mirror each morning and seeing more than flaws, you see design. You begin to live with a kind of gentle defiance, not to prove anything to anyone, but to honor everything God placed inside of you. You walk into rooms without needing to be the loudest voice because you know the quiet strength of someone who belongs to God. You choose presence over performance, peace over striving, wholeness over hustle. Because when you finally stop trying to become someone else, you give yourself back to the God who never stopped loving who you really are. And yes, there will be days when it feels easier to blend in. To dim your light so no one feels uncomfortable, to soften your convictions so no one walks away. But remember what Jesus said in Matthew 5:14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." That's not a metaphor to make you feel good. That's an identity statement. He didn't say, try to be a light. He said, you are. So live like it. Not to prove your worth, but to reveal his. Let the world do what it does. Let it sell images and formulas and facades. You weren't made for that. You were made to stand in the light of God's truth and reflect it in a way only you can, so hold fast. When the pressure rises, remember this: you are not a copy. You are not a role to perform or a brand to build. You are a soul handcrafted by the maker of the stars, filled with light the world cannot comprehend. Live like someone who's already accepted by heaven because you are. Live like someone who has nothing left to prove because you don't. Live like someone whose name was whispered by God before the foundation of the world, because that's the truth. Don't shrink to make others feel more comfortable. Don't twist yourself to fit someone else's expectation of holy. Holiness doesn't mean being quiet and small. It means being fully alive in the truth. It means radiating the love of Christ through the shape of your own story, through the personality you've been given, through the fire that only you carry. You are not here to impress. You're here to impact. You're not here to follow the script. You're here to follow the Spirit. And that's where your life becomes unshakable. When it's no longer about proving yourself, but about presenting yourself as a living reflection of the God who formed you. The world wants more of the same. But God is raising up people who will dare to be different, who will speak when others stay silent, who will love when it's inconvenient, who will choose holiness when compromise seems easier, people who will say, I am who He says I am, and that's enough. So keep walking in your design. Let your faith be loud in your actions. Let your identity be rooted deeper than applause. And let your soul rest, not in what others think, but in what God has already said. You don't have to become what this world rewards to matter in God's kingdom. You just have to stay faithful to who He made you to be. That is where your power lies. That is where the anointing flows. And that is where your peace will return again and again. You were never called to become a shadow of someone else's spotlight. You were called to carry light, the kind that doesn't compete, the kind that doesn't dim, the kind that only burns brighter the closer it gets to the source. And heaven rejoices not when you meet someone else's expectations, but when you live into the full truth of your God-given design. Flaws don't cancel beauty. They reveal the artist. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that beauty means perfection. That if something is scratched, bent, weathered, or wounded, it loses its worth. But that's not how the artist sees it. That's not how God sees you. He's not threatened by what's broken. He's not embarrassed by your weakness. He doesn't withdraw when you fall short. In fact, what you often call flawed, He calls formed. There's a sacred tension in being human. We long to be whole, yet we carry cracks. We hunger for joy, but grief finds its way in. We want to be strong, yet we stumble. And still, God is not disappointed in our limitations. He doesn't shake His head in regret. He meets us in the gap, not with shame, but with grace. He sees what we call ruined and calls it redeemable. That's the power of divine love. It doesn't require us to hide what's been bruised. It invites us to see how those places can reflect light differently, more tenderly, more honestly, more beautifully. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul records the words of Jesus, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This is not a verse to skim over. It's a declaration that shifts everything. It tells us that God does not need us to be flawless to be powerful. He does not anoint perfection. He pours strength into the cracks. That's where His glory doesn't compete with ours. That's where we stop striving and start surrendering. Some will try to sell you the idea that you must fix everything before you can be used by God. That unless you're polished, you're not ready. But the gospel tells a different story. It tells of fishermen who doubted, a tax collector who betrayed, a woman at the well who was shunned, and a man who denied Christ 3 times. And yet, all of them became pillars in the story of redemption, not because they were flawless, but because they were willing. That should comfort us. You don't have to erase your humanity to reveal God's holiness. In fact, your humanity might be the very lens through which others finally see Him. Your battle with insecurity, your struggle with control, your history of pain, none of that disqualifies you. It just proves you're human. And God never asked for anything more. Leonard Cohen once wrote, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Those words feel like scripture to anyone who has ever sat in the middle of their mess and wondered if it still mattered. Because the light of Christ doesn't just come to sit in our strength. It comes to fill the places that tremble, that ache, that feel too small or too much. And if that sounds too gentle to be true, consider the life of Christ Himself. The resurrected Jesus could have appeared with a body fully healed, fully restored, no scars. And yet, He chose to show the marks in his hands and feet. He chose to let Thomas place his hand in his side. Why? Because the scars weren't signs of failure. They were proof of love. And maybe yours are too. We often carry our wounds like shameful secrets. But what if the things you're hiding are the things God most wants to use? Not to shame you, but to show the world what healing looks like in real time. Not every story of grace ends with a bow tied neatly around it. Sometimes grace just means you kept walking, that you didn't give up, that you stayed soft even after being hurt. Morgan Harper Nichols once said, "Your imperfections are not mistakes. They are brushstrokes of a masterpiece in progress." That line speaks to the soul like a friend placing their hand on yours. It reminds you that what feels undone is still being shaped, that what looks chaotic from your angle is being composed by a steady, divine hand. The truth is, if we spend our lives trying to appear perfect, we rob others of the encouragement they need most, knowing they're not alone in their struggle. When you share the part of your story that still feels raw, you're not being weak, you're being brave. Because that's where healing begins, in the honesty of what still hurts. We live in a culture obsessed with filters and fixes. We're told to hide the tired eyes, silence the shaky voice, perfect the image. But God is not impressed with your performance. He's drawn to your presence, to your heart, to your willingness to be real with Him. And in that place of rawness, His Spirit moves. Not to shame you, but to strengthen you. You are allowed to have weaknesses. You are allowed to not have it all together. God never required you to be a model of perfection. He just asks you to be available, to be open, to let Him use even the parts you've tried to bury. If you've been carrying regret, let this be the moment you release it. Regret keeps you chained to a version of yourself that no longer exists. But grace reminds you that growth is possible even from the hardest soil. What once hurt you doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. And where the world sees a mess, God sees a beginning. Imagine what could happen if you stopped apologizing for your flaws. If you stopped waiting to be fixed before you stepped forward. You were never called to be flawless. You were called to be faithful. And faithfulness often looks like trying again, showing up anyway, saying yes, even when your voice shakes. You are still being formed. And the marks that prove your journey are not blemishes. They're signs that you kept going, that you were stretched and shaped and pressed, but never abandoned. You are not a broken thing to be hidden. You are a living testimony of how grace rebuilds. So let your flaws speak, not in shame, but in honesty. Let them become the soil where compassion grows. Let them shape your prayers, deepen your empathy, and soften your judgments. The most beautiful souls are often the ones who have been cracked open and still chose to love. You do not need to curate yourself into worthiness. God's love met you long before you tried to earn it, and it will meet you again today. In the middle of your doubt, in the silence of your disappointment, in the tender ache that something in your life still hasn't healed. Even there, especially there, His voice still speaks, "You are mine." That kind of love changes things. It rewrites the internal narrative. It silences the critic in your head. It frees you from the exhausting pursuit of perfection and invites you into peace. And peace doesn't come when everything is fixed. It comes when you finally accept that you are already held. You don't have to strive to be loved. You are loved. You don't have to hide to be seen. You are seen. And you don't have to be strong all the time to be valuable. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be honest about your need. That's not failure, that's freedom. In a world that demands you be polished, God invites you to be real. In a culture that prizes the filtered, he celebrates the faithful. And in a life that will inevitably include both beauty and brokenness, he promises to work all things together for your good, even the parts you'd rather skip. So stop waiting to be perfect before you walk in your purpose. It's your cracks that reveal the light, your flaws that invite grace, your honesty that draws others into healing, and your story, yes, your real, unfinished, imperfect story, is the canvas where God is still painting glory. You are a masterpiece, not because you are flawless, but because you are held by the one who never lets go. And every brushstroke, even the ones you didn't ask for, is part of a design that is more beautiful than you can yet imagine. Let today be the day you stop hiding. Let it be the day you stop measuring yourself by impossible standards. Let it be the day you believe deeply that you are not damaged goods. You are deeply loved, fully known, and still called. The artist is not finished with you, and he never regrets what he began. Grow into the image, not into the expectation. There's a quiet pressure that follows most people, even if they can't quite name it. It's not always loud. It doesn't always come with criticism or commands, but it lingers like background music in your soul, the sense that you need to be more, do more, please more. The expectation of becoming something that sounds noble but feels exhausting. Sometimes it even wears a spiritual disguise, telling you that if you were more like them, more disciplined, more bold, more together, then maybe you'd finally be doing life right. But God never asked you to grow into an expectation. He invited you to grow into His image. One is suffocating, the other is sacred. The expectations of the world, even the well-meaning ones, can become cages. They give you roles to play instead of space to grow. They ask for performance without knowing your process. And they rarely make room for weakness, mystery, or slow transformation. But the image of God, that's different. That's not a script, it's a shaping. Not a product you must become, but a presence you are called to reflect. 2 Corinthians 3:18 paints this picture so beautifully. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into His image with ever-increasing glory. Did you catch that? Being transformed. Not instantly perfect, not pressured into change, not immediately qualified. You are in a process, and it is holy. When you look to Christ, you are not looking at a model to copy perfectly. You are looking at the source who reshapes you gently, gradually, with grace. And unlike the world, He doesn't grow impatient when you take longer than expected. He doesn't withdraw when you stumble. He stays, He works, He transforms. Jenny Allen once wrote, "Don't chase success, chase surrender." That's not just a shift in goal, it's a whole different way of living. Because chasing expectation is a form of control, but growing into the image of God is a kind of surrender. You let go of who you thought you had to be, and you let Him call forth who He made you to be. One step at a time. Some expectations come from the outside, from people who think they know what's best for you, from systems that define worth by productivity, from communities that value appearance over authenticity. But some of the heaviest expectations are the ones we place on ourselves. The inner pressure to always have the right answer, to never need help, to prove that we're good enough, holy enough, strong enough. But the image of God was never about performance. It's about presence. It's about the way you carry love, the way you reflect truth, the way you walk in grace, even when your knees are trembling. And the transformation that matters most doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in secret. It happens when no one's clapping, when no one sees the effort, when the fruit isn't obvious yet, but still you're growing. You're praying. You're showing up. You're letting go of your plans to make room for His. Lisa TerKeurst once said, "The real victory is not becoming what others applaud, but becoming who God intended." That sentence deserves to be written on every mirror and spoken over every weary heart. Because applause fades, approval shifts. But who God intended you to become, that identity lasts. It was written before you were born, and it won't be erased by anyone's opinion. So ask yourself this: are you growing into an expectation, or are you growing into the image? The difference matters. Expectations say, "Get it right." God says, "Walk with me." Expectations demand, "Don't fail." God whispers, "When you fall, I'll catch you." Expectations want a product. God wants your heart. One exhausts, the other restores. And here's something you might need to hear today. You are not behind. You're not too late. The timeline you're comparing yourself to, it's not God's. His growth doesn't always follow the logic of calendars or the rhythm of culture. His growth moves to the pace of trust, of faith, of obedience. You might not see the results yet, but that doesn't mean transformation isn't happening. Roots grow in silence, character forms in obscurity, and spiritual strength is often built in seasons where everything feels small and unseen. The question is not, am I growing fast enough? It's, am I staying close enough to the one who grows me? And staying close doesn't mean performing. It means being honest. When you're tired, tell Him. When you're confused, ask Him. When you're disappointed, bring that to Him too. He is not looking for a spiritual version of you that only exists on your best days. He's looking for you, the real, messy, in-process you. Because that's the one He died for. That's the one He lives in. That's the one He is transforming. You don't have to outgrow your weakness to reflect Christ. Sometimes your weakness is the very canvas where His strength is most visible. Transformation doesn't mean the absence of struggle. It means the presence of grace in the midst of it. So when people place expectations on you that don't align with God's voice, release them. When you feel crushed by standards you can't meet, breathe. You were never meant to carry what He didn't ask you to hold. This doesn't mean growth is easy. It's not. It means choosing surrender over striving. It means believing that even when it feels slow, it's still sacred. It means looking at who you were 6 months ago, not with shame, but with gratitude. I may not be where I want to be yet, but look at how far God has brought me. You don't become like Christ by trying harder. You become like Christ by staying near Him. And in that nearness, your priorities shift. Your heart softens. Your motives purify. Your soul exhales. It's easy to think that spiritual growth is about becoming more impressive, but often it's about becoming more free, more humble, more kind, more attuned to His voice than the noise of the crowd. The world will try to define you by what you do. God defines you by who you are becoming, and that's not based on performance. It's based on presence, yours, His, together. Let go of the script you were handed, the one that says you should have achieved more by now, or been stronger, or more visible, or more like someone else. That script wasn't written for you. God's story is better. And in His story, growth looks like grace layered on top of honesty, like strength emerging from surrender, like peace rooted not in circumstance, but in trust. You are being transformed, even on the days when you feel like nothing's changing, even in the dry seasons, even when your prayers feel empty. Even there, He is still at work. And when you stop trying to meet every expectation, you make room for something better, to simply be with Him, to sit at His feet, to ask Him what He sees in you that you've forgotten, to invite Him into the parts of your life you've been trying to fix on your own, because God doesn't rush what He values, and He values you. So give yourself permission to grow slowly, to learn deeply, to be reshaped gradually. Don't despise the in-between. That's where identity is solidified, not in what you're doing, but in who you're becoming. Maybe the reason you feel tired isn't because you're failing, it's because you're trying to live up to something that was never yours to carry. Maybe today is the invitation you've needed, not to stop growing, but to start growing in the right direction, toward God, toward freedom, toward your true design. You are not a disappointment. You are not too much or not enough. You are a reflection in progress, an image being refined, a soul being restored. And the God who began this work in you, He will complete it. Not because you're strong, but because He is faithful every time. Shine without permission, because you were lit by heaven. There comes a point in every journey where you have to decide who gets to define your radiance. Will it be the people who misunderstood you? The culture that only applauds what's marketable? The critics who only see what you lack? Or will it be the God who lit your soul with eternal flame and called it good? You don't have to ask the world for permission to shine. You were lit by heaven. From the very beginning, the light inside you wasn't manufactured. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't based on talent, timing, or trends. It was spoken into existence by the same voice that said, "Let there be light," and watch the darkness flee. So what makes you think you need to shrink now? What makes you believe you must dim your glow just because someone else doesn't understand it, celebrate it, or reflect it? In Matthew 5:14, Jesus says with a clarity that cuts through generations, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Not should be, not try to be, not if you're good enough, maybe someday will be. No, you are. It's not a compliment, it's a calling. And that light inside you wasn't placed there to fit in. It wasn't meant to be quiet. It wasn't made to be safe. It was meant to be seen. But here's what's hard. The world will often ask you to turn down your light because it's not ready to deal with its own shadows. It will project discomfort. It will mislabel your passion as pride, your confidence as arrogance, your boldness as too much. Don't let that keep you quiet. Don't let fear dress itself up as humility. Maya Angelou once said, "Don't dim your light just because it's shining in someone else's shadow." That line stays with you, doesn't it? Because how many times have you apologized for who you are? Not because you were wrong, but because your truth made someone else uncomfortable. But God never gave you that light to make others feel small. He gave you that light because the world is dark and He needed you in it. He needed your voice where silence has been heavy. He needed your story in rooms where shame had the final word. He needed your joy in spaces where sorrow used to live. You are not just a person walking through life. You are a bearer of divine light, and you carry it into places where others have forgotten how to hope. Bob Goff once said, "God has planted greatness in you. Let it grow wild." What a thought. That maybe the most obedient thing you could do today is stop taming your light. Stop packaging it in small talk. Stop apologizing for being on fire with things that matter. This is the season to burn brighter, not because of ego, but because of assignment. You're not shining to be noticed. You're shining because you've been found. You're not stepping forward to be praised. You're stepping up because others need to see what faith looks like when it walks, not just when it speaks. Light doesn't argue, it doesn't perform, it just shows up and the darkness retreats. So when you feel that old urge to hide, to soften your words, to fade into the background, to let fear narrate your next decision, pause. Ask yourself this: who am I dimming my light for? And why do they get more say over my life than the one who gave me breath? The people who are for you will never ask you to be less. The God who made you will never ask you to become invisible. The world needs more than politeness right now. It needs presence, real, rooted, radiant presence. And that's what you carry when you walk in the fullness of who God made you to be. You don't have to scream to be seen. You don't have to prove anything to shine. You just have to stay connected to the source. That means spending less time polishing your image and more time praying for your endurance. Less time wondering who's watching and more time wondering who needs your light right now. Because someone does. Someone is waiting for a person just like you to stop hesitating, to rise, to speak, to be bold enough, to be real, to step into that God-given space with open hands and say, "Lord, use me." Even if my voice shakes, even if I feel unworthy, even if I don't see the full picture yet, I'll still show up. That's what shining really is. It's not perfection. It's not platform. It's presence. It's faith walking into ordinary moments with extraordinary expectation. And listen, you don't owe the world a performance, but you do owe God your obedience. He gave you that light for a reason. Don't bury it under layers of fear, doubt, or comparison. Fan it, guard it, walk in it. Let them see the fire and feel the warmth. Let them wonder what keeps you burning. And when they ask, point them back to the source. You are the light of the world, not the backup light, not the emergency light, not the when everything's perfect light. The light right now, as you are. So shine, even when it's quiet, even when no one claps, even when it scares you, especially then, because every time you step into your calling without apology, heaven celebrates and hell trembles. You were never meant to disappear. You were never called to become a copy. You were spoken into existence by the God who creates wonders, not duplicates. So if today has left you weary, uncertain, or tempted to shrink, I want you to hear this as clearly as if it were whispered straight from heaven. You are God's masterpiece, not because of what you've done, not because of how others see you, but because of who formed you, lovingly, intentionally, and without regret. So don't trade His design for the world's imitation. Don't bend your soul just to fit someone else's mold. The light inside you is real, it's needed, it's sacred. Shine anyway.